So I'll open this. With this image, it's not really all that fantastic. If I change it to grayscale, it's not so great, and I could try and lighten it up or define it, but I don't think it would be that great an image to work with, so I'll just undo that. But if I have a look at the channels, because everything is made up out of red, green and blue, I can have a look at those. So if I click on just the red, yeah, okay, it doesn't hold much definition. The green becomes a lot more interesting. There's a lot more contrast between this darker area and the lighter area. If I go to the blue, a wee bit wishy-washy. So it's the green that actually looks a lot more interesting and would probably give me a better result. So all I'm doing is selecting all out of the green. I'm copying it or cutting it, doesn't matter. Going into the layers here, and actually I can just make it white for a start. I probably could have done it with pasting it and pasting it in. It's a little bit dirty around the background. I could have done this in channels as well. And if it's a bit dirty around the edges, you can use the dodge tool and clean that up. And even with this, if I put it on a low exposure, maybe a bigger brush, and a low exposure, I can come in here and start to play with it. So this image that was more or less unusable for a moment now now becomes something like this, where it's a much more interesting texture and pattern, and is something that we can start to use within our work. So all of these, it's exactly the same thing. Open it up and see what channel looks a wee bit more interesting. So let's open another one and have a look. It's the original. We'll probably have to go back to the it's the colored ones that become a lot more interesting. The grayscale ones, even in RGB, there's not going to be much difference between the channels. Have a look at the channels here. So that's my red, so really darkened in. Green means that now I'm going to get a little bit more interesting definition through here if I want, where this one becomes a lot more of a solid black. There's still a kind of interesting pattern through there. Blue, it's too far gone. So this one, I'll do it slightly differently. I'll try this one, see what we can get. So I'll select all, which is Command A. I'll cut it or copy it. I just go cut, because once I've cut it, I kind of like looking at what colors come up. This time, so I can have the transparency, I'm going to make a new alpha channel, so alpha 1, paste it, and then the same old thing. We can start to bring in the contrast and try and change this to much purer black and white. I'll go okay. It's probably as far as I can push it, and then I'm going to get the dodge. It's a wee bit too low, so I'll bump the exposure up a wee bit and just lightening off around this. So, sorry, just rub this bit out with the brush, and if I flatten it a wee bit here, I can come in even with the low exposure and just kind of eat that so that the edge looks not like it's just a harsh cut across it. And so we've got that, the usual thing, Command I, because white's going to be what we fill with color. Hit the selection tool down here, and then into the layers, a new layer, and give it a color. There's my color there. So Option Delete, which fills it with a foreground color. Command D just gets rid of that selection. And then this one here, I'll just D for pure black and white. Command Delete is going to fill it with the background color, which is white. Just to see what it looks like. So the exercise at the moment is very simply try and cut some sort of silhouette stencil if you can, and then go over it with different mark making tools and bring it into Photoshop and have a selection and pick a channel. Now this might be something where you do it as an exercise and you think, I'm not going to use this in my final work. Still do it, put it in your workbook, and rather than having to go through this whole kind of channel process if you're not going to use it, just I'll just revert this for a second. Then just go to the channels, click on the channel, and take a screen capture of it and stick it on Trello or stick it in your workbook, just to show that you're going through that process. So it's another form of screening, if you will, but rather than being the same kind of complexity as last week, we're doing something that's far more analog, getting off the computer and doing something that's a wee bit more manual.